Welcome to the Dawn Jarvis Show with Dawn Jarvis, the diverse nurse. And in this podcast, we will be talking about healthcare, self-care, diversity, careers, and well-being from a black woman's perspective. If you're a person of colour, an ally, partner, or employer of person of colour, and interested in a diverse perspective on health, self-care, and well-being, then this is the podcast for you. If you are ready to turn your expertise into that thing you have always wanted to do and are not prepared to let potential barriers or difference hold you back, then you are definitely in the right place. Join registered nurse, coach and motivational speaker Dawn Jarvis, the diverse nurse, to get the advice, inspiration, strategies and tough love you need to manifest the life, career or organisation that you want and need in this diverse world. We're really happy that you're here. So if you're ready, let's get on with the show.
Hello and welcome to the show. And today I am talking to Andrew Baguley. Andrew is an actor and voiceover artist who has had colon cancer in the recent past. So we're going to have a chat about how that was for him and the impact it had on his life. So Andrew, how was having colon cancer for you and how did you manage your health and well-being?
Okay, well, it was a bit of a shock. I had a bowel blockage. I wasn't able to poo. And I thought, well, I'll eat more fibre and that will sort it out.
Did it sort it out?
No. because there was a physical blockage in my colon quite low down. How did you find out, though? Well, I went to my GP, first of all, because this was happening for months. We're talking 2016 now. And in 2016, this kind of started happening in the summer. And I went on holiday to Greece and I thought I'm going to be eating amazing food and vegetables and salads and Greek salads. And I'm going to be having great poos. And I was mystified because I was eating all these great things and having no poos or tiny poos.
Were you in pain?
No, I wasn't in pain, but I was starting to get very freaked because when there is an obstruction or something is stuck in your body, things aren't working as they should. So I was on this beautiful Greek island eating these beautiful Greek vegetables and input was happening, but output wasn't happening. And I thought something is wrong. What's wrong?
And what did you do?
So when I came back from Greece, I went to my walk-in NHS clinic and the lady, after 4 hours waiting, felt my tummy and she said, "Oh, it feels okay, but maybe a bit lumpy." And
how did she feel when she used the word lumpy?
I thought...
Were you confident?
Because then she followed up the word lumpy with, "But it's probably okay, but you should see your GP." So this is obviously the difference with the walk-in centre. These were strangers that, to me. So I went to see my GP, and then my GP said, "It's probably nothing. We'll do a blood test." And I think I had a blood test, and it didn't show anything up. I don't know what the blood test was. And then...
That sounds quite worrying.
Things still weren't getting any better. Or then maybe I got some diarrhea. And then eventually I went to my GP. I saw this really young locum who was like 12 years old.
12 years old.
And she said, "You need a colonoscopy. We can't sort out what this is until you have a colonoscopy." So she sent me for a colonoscopy.
So having a colonoscopy is quite stressful, isn't it? For people who don't know, having a colonoscopy involves having a tube inserted into your rectum and having a look with a camera to see if they can see any blockages there. And you have to prepare by emptying your bowel. And I'd imagine that's quite a stressful situation to even have to go for a colonoscopy, never mind worrying that it might be cancer. Yeah. Were you aware that it might be cancer when you were sent for the colonoscopy?
Yeah, I've got cancer in my family and I'm reasonably tooled up in terms of my health knowledge. So yeah, I thought, oh, is this cancer? But everyone is saying it's probably nothing to worry about, and the words they use, it's probably nothing suspicious or it's probably nothing sinister. Those are the words.
So are those words helpful?
No, sinister is not helpful.
Excuse me. So sinister, so for healthcare workers out there, do not use the word sinister. It's not helpful. And I can see why, Andrew.
Yeah, it feels like a Hollywood, it's a sinister movie, you know. Yes, exactly.
So you went for the colonoscopy. So did you have anybody with you, or did you do this alone?
No, I did this alone. My brother was coming to meet me later on.
Okay, and is it a day case? Did you do it in a day? You didn't stay
outpatient. Yeah.
Yeah, because back in my day, you was in hospital for 3 days.
Really?
1 day for prep, with the dreaded bowel prep, which was again sticking a tube up your rectum and then pouring warm water in it and seeing what comes out, and then so they wanted your bowel clean for
Lord.
it, and then you would then you'd have the procedure, then you would recover from the procedure. She was then in for at least 3 days. So things have moved on a lot since the prehistoric days of the 80s.
That's amazing. Now, I didn't have to do that. I turned up at 9 o'clock in the morning. I hadn't eaten. I'd had the bowel prep, which was just a sachet which I put into water and then drank. And then I had diarrhea, and then that cleared it out. And then I went into the room and they sedated me. And I had a lovely sedation, and the people were lovely.
So you were conscious while they had the...
I was sedated, so I was kind of a bit dreamy, and that was kind of nice because they use fentanyl, which is a drug of choice on the street in the UK.
Well, we probably shouldn't be promoting fentanyl as the drug of choice, but yes, I understand what you're saying.
It's a popular opiate.
Yes, it works.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and then I woke up and they said... I said, how was that? And they said, that was fine. How are you feeling? By the way, we've found a mass. That was the word they used.
So you were a bit drowsy.
Yes.
And they said it went really well, but we found a mass. And that's quite a bit of a train hurtling towards you moment, I would imagine.
It certainly is. And so they said to me, well, you'll see the nurse outside. Put your clothes back on, I was in a gown, and go outside into the waiting room, have some tea and biscuits, because those are provided afterwards. And by that time my brother was there, and I said to my brother, they found a mass, and already my mind knew that it was cancer. But I sat in a room then with a nurse, and she showed me the still photos that they take from the colonoscopy, and she said, there's a very good chance that this is cancer. We don't know for sure, but we'll biopsy.
Okay, so you've had some quite difficult news, and then you have to have another procedure. So what did you do immediately afterwards? Because I always, I have been around when bad news has been given, and then your patient walks out of the door and you think, oh, what are they going to do now? And I think you were lucky to have your brother with you as support, but sometimes people are on their own when they get that kind of news. So what did you do immediately afterwards?
I wanted to be on my own, so I told my brother, and we had a conversation about it, and then I think I had a cup of coffee, and then I went home and I thought, OMG.
I've probably got cancer.
I've probably got cancer.
And what went through your head?
I'm going to die.
Oh, that's awful. So is there any way that healthcare professionals can make that any easier? Because I'm at a loss, actually, and it would be really interesting to hear from a sort of person who's receiving that news how that could be done better or supported better. Do you think, they'd already used the word sinister, so you knew that potentially there were going to be bad news, but there was also this hope that it would be probably nothing, which was also used. So it didn't turn out, and it was the worst case scenario probably out of all of those things. And I'm just interested.
How could it be different? I don't know. News is news, really. It wasn't that they did it appallingly badly or anything, because I needed to be told that there was a mass, and I then needed to sit with the nurse, and she said there's a reasonable chance it's going to be cancer, but we'll do a biopsy. And I did ask about next steps, and she said we'll send all of this to your GP, and you'll get a follow-up call, and we'll call you in for when we've got the results of the biopsy, and if it is cancer, then you'll go in, you'll have some surgery. Okay. And at the moment, we don't know what stage the cancer is at. So it will be a bit of a waiting game, and I suspect she probably did say this is quite difficult news, I'm sure, and I'm sorry that you've got this bad news, but no doubt she made some reassuring noises about, we've found it now, so then we can get on with treating it.
And that is a good point, because there's cancer screening now, and the whole point is to find cancer early so that it can be treated.
Yes.
So, how did it go for you? Because you mentioned surgery, you obviously had the biopsy.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was, what stage of cancer was it?
They couldn't tell me that until after the surgery.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, this was in November, so I went into hospital on the 2nd of January. I had to wait quite a long time, and those were strange weeks after my colonoscopy and before I went into St Thomas's Hospital in London for this, because they indicated that I asked them at the colonoscopy, how long has this been there? And the guy said, it's impossible to say. It could have been in there growing slowly bigger for 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, wow.
So that reassured me, because I thought, well, if it's been in there for 5 or 10 years, then another couple of months isn't going to be a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But then, of course, I started to think, how aggressive is this cancer, and so on. So I had a very odd time. I talked to a load of friends and I said, I've got cancer. Maybe this was after I had the biopsy.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, oh my God, can I buy you a drink? And
alcohol, yes.
Alcohol.
Yes.
And the time just passed. It wasn't too bad. I think I was in a bit of a state of shock.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually had quite a nice Christmas.
So it happened before Christmas time.
Yeah.
You had it hanging over you at Christmas time. I can't imagine what's that's like, but you managed, with the help of your friends,
I saw
to
friends,
be able to manage that and not have this, this might be my last Christmas, or this might be last. You're probably just only thinking that now because I mention it and making it sound very dramatic, but
Yes, and of course the other thing I did during that period was visited Dr. Google a number of times.
Yeah, so is that helpful to, yes, Dr. Google?
I know that it's not always helpful and it can bring about terrible fears, but I think on the whole, they said, well, there are different sorts of bowel cancer. Some can be fast, some can be slow. Mm-hmm. It's the biggest, one of the second biggest or the biggest killer in men, and I'm 65. At that time I was 61 or 62 or something. But they also said, we can, if it's caught early enough, we can get excellent outcomes and create a pretty much a cure.
So had you had cancer screening?
No. Yes, I had. I had the smear test in the post. Yeah. So I did that, and that was maybe 2015, and that was all fine. So that's looking for blood, and it didn't find any blood.
Okay. And did anybody say anything about that? I mean, because it could have been there 5 or 10 years, but maybe if it had been there, the screening would have caught it. So maybe that makes a difference in timing, or maybe not. Yeah,
but some cancers, I think, exude blood, and I don't think my cancer did, and that's why they didn't pick it up.
So you had a successful surgery. You told me that you're now cancer free. You're still having checks, aren't you?
Yeah, they put me on a 5-year supervision program, and I get a CT scan every year or 18 months or so. I get a colonoscopy. Well, I've had 3 or 4 colonoscopies since the surgery. Mm-hmm. I developed some polyps, and then they got rid of those polyps, and that was a very painful colonoscopy where I don't think they gave me enough fentanyl.
Okay.
And,
did you feed that back to the people
and
said, next time, more fentanyl,
One
please?
of the polyps was in a bend in my lower bowel, and they couldn't get at it, and they were more focused on what was going on the screen, the TV screen, than on my suffering.
Yes.
And it was one of the most painful
I'm sorry to hear
things that I've experienced in my life. Maybe not the most painful, but it was certainly up there in the top 3.
Oh, wow.
So
I'm now wondering what the other 2 were, but I will save that for another time. Maybe it's too much for the audience. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. Let's not go there. But now I'm waiting for I've had a polyp-free colonoscopy, and now I'm waiting for another colonoscopy. And they also give me a CEA test, which is a cancer marker test for cancer markers in the blood.
So,
and it was stage 3, by the way.
It was stage 3?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So, that's quite a lot to take on, and probably Dr. Google probably did help you around thinking about the stages and things like that, and the potential implications.
I googled survival rates, stage 3.
What did it say?
It kind of in the 60s, I think, for stage 3. 60% is...
Okay. I don't actually know.
But my surgeon told me that he'd had a very successful operation and he'd been able to get the cancer out and it didn't seem to have spread, and then the biopsy showed that it wasn't. They took out 10 lymph nodes as well, and the biopsy showed that there was 0 cancerous activity in those lymph
really
nodes.
Important.
And they'd been able to sew me back together again, so I was able eventually to resume normal bowel function. Because they had measured me up for a colostomy bag.
Yeah, and how did you, that's quite a difficult thing to do with in terms of body image, and you knew that was a possibility, and obviously you were delighted that didn't happen, but had you prepared yourself for that?
Yes, and when I woke up, I was in a lot of pain, post-operative pain, but I was very happy because the first thing I did was look up, down my medical gown and see that there was no bag,
and there was relief all round.
Yeah, I was given a 25 to 50% chance of having to have one, and I didn't have one, so that immediately cheered me up. No end.
Yeah, well, it would do. It would do, wouldn't it? So do you have any tips for people who might be in the same situation as you? Is there anything with hindsight that you would have done differently, as in when you had the symptoms? Would you have gone to the doctors earlier, or do you think you went to the doctors as early as you could?
I was in a bit of denial, and I thought, well, it's probably nothing, and I was told by doctors it's probably nothing.
Yeah.
So I think I've realised that it's important to ask for the test, the colonoscopy, because that's really the only way of diagnosing bowel cancer.
Yeah. Okay.
Although of course people might be afraid of having a colonoscopy because it's an invasive procedure.
Yeah, it is, and it's not comfortable, and even the thought of it is unpleasant.
Yes.
I guess. Yes. I've never had one, but I know people who have. So, any more tips? And how are you feeling now? Are you well and healthy?
I'm well and healthy now. The cancer could come back in another place in the bowel, but I know I'm being on this surveillance program. So I'm 3.5 years into that, so that's got another 18 months to go. We're in the middle of COVID now, so I suspect my CT scan and my colonoscopy will be delayed somewhat.
Yeah.
But at least I'm in the surveillance program, and the staff in the surveillance team have all been great. And then after that, I'll get tests every 2 years.
Okay. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, Andrew, about that, and I've learnt lots about your colon that I didn't know before today.
I should have mentioned it earlier.
You should have mentioned it earlier, but thank you for being my guest and sharing that information with us. I think it'd be very helpful to the people who are listening to the podcast. Fantastic. And particularly around healthcare staff and around, that quite terrible news that you've got cancer and that the actual impact on what people do when they go home. Yeah. So thank you again.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you for listening to the Dawn Jarvis Show. If you enjoyed this episode, there are 2 things you can do. Number 1, leave Dawn a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. It would mean so much to her if you took a moment out of your time to post your thoughts on the show. It will help Dawn reach so many more people and help them with their well-being. Number 2, subscribe to Dawn's email list, the Diverse Nurse Digest, using the link in the show notes. Until the next time, thank you and goodbye.